I want to get your thoughts on this. Look, everybody loves nostalgia, and everybody loves talking about how great things are. But obviously, they had trouble because things were moving in a different direction. So it appears this brick and mortar bookstores are making a comeback. I want to get your take on what's behind the momentum, and is it sustainable?
For sure. There's a few reasons for that. For Barnes& Noble in particular, the biggest driver is that the company has changed how it runs its stores. So under their CEO, James Stott, who is a veteran bookseller, Barnes& Noble's strategy has really been to give local store teams more autonomy and control over what they stock and how stores look. So they're basically treating each location like an indie bookstore. And that's had a huge impact on reversing years of declining sales and store closures and allowed Barnes& Noble to start expanding again.
You know, I love the fact you can get your hands on magazines, vinyl. I'd like to hear newspapers in there as well. But talk more about the way Barnes & Noble is changing its stores. The new storefront we mentioned doesn't have a cafe. I know people used to love to go sit down, sip coffee, read through books. Is it a strategic move or perhaps an oversight?
I think it's a strategic move. That's a good question. It really reflects a broader shift away from a fixed store template. Barnes& Noble basically no longer believes every store needs to have the same layout or the same features. Some stores are large, some are small, some have cafes, some don't. The focus is on opening stores that fit the space and the local market rather than forcing a standard format.
Man, that just seems so logical. It seems like it's not done enough nowadays. But let's talk about what they are selling, because you know Barnes and Noble for 2 decades focused on books and as I mentioned, maybe some coffee latte. But these things have all kinds of things. Candles, Legos are out there, and the fact that they are catering to whatever city, whatever region they're in. Tell me why you think that is a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say books are still the core business, but like you pointed out, stores also carry complementary items like notebooks, stationery, vinyl. The way they've merchandised and organized stores has changed a lot. Stores now use more, for example, like table displays to encourage more browsing. Uh, Instead of like large bookshelves, those displays will also highlight genres or authors trending on social media. And you'll even see like handwritten book recommendations from store employees, which is something you would typically find in an indie bookshop, which again just kind of goes back to that broader indie bookstore model that they're testing out. And it seems to be working for them.
Interesting you segue into that. Do you think that smaller bookstores could see a similar kind of revival?
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely are. They're definitely growing. This is a fun stat. Last year alone, more than 400 new stores joined the American Booksellers Association. That's the trade group that represents indie bookstores. And that was a big increase from the year before. And what's interesting too is we're seeing more genre-specific bookstores open up
Mm.
all over the country, in fact. So, like, for example, there's a dedicated horror bookstore in Brooklyn called The Twisted Spine, and that opened this past year.
Love the name. Love the name. Twisted Spine. Okay, social
Me too.
media and post-pandemic, what roles are they playing in Barnes and Noble's newfound popularity? And why is it only now kind of popping out, considering we've been out of the pandemic now for a number of years?
Yeah, a lot of this comes down to timing. So during the pandemic, people read more, book sales surged. Meanwhile, online communities, especially on TikTok, really helped drive interest in specific titles and
Right.
genres. So when stores reopened, that online demand translated into in-person traffic. And Barnes& Noble set up its stores to really receive and successfully received that demand. And Barnes& Noble has leaned into that by prominently featuring TikTok trending books and even hosting midnight release events for popular titles. And tapping into that enthusiasm has helped drive sales and foot traffic.
Okay, we're just about out of time, Allison, but quickly, it used to be all Barnes and Nobles were exactly the same. You'd walk in, you'd see the on-sale stuff before you even got in, and then you'd walk around. So tell me how it's changing its online and social media presence, and how do you think that is going to improve sales moving forward?
So I would say Barnes& and Noble has become more aware of social media trends. I would say that that's the biggest change they've made in terms of their digital strategy. But the company has also been clear, at least when I've interviewed James Daunt, that e-commerce is still a weaker spot for them.
Mm.
Online sales surged during the pandemic, but have since fallen back to pre-pandemic levels. The company has said it plans to improve its digital infrastructure, but it doesn't see online retail as the primary driver of its turnaround. It's really all about the stores and using digital platforms like TikTok to drive people into stores.